Hey everybody, it's Tony Cardinelli with Cross Country Mortgage. As you're out shopping for homes, I want you to know what it's like to go through a purchase transaction from a timeline perspective. You'll want to know this because there's certain milestones in a purchase transaction that are very important that your lenders are going to be watching out closely for, and you should also be. So I'd like you to know about these, and it'll give you some perspective on the different times in a transaction when you might need money, you might be writing checks. It'll give you some perspective on what happens at these different stages as well, so you can be prepared. Keep in mind, we're always going to be calling you each Tuesday and updating you on what's going on with your transaction, so there's no need to worry about being prepared when that time comes. But nonetheless, this will help you give an early look at what happens. So let's get right into it. So for a timeline for your purchase transaction, I've selected a 45-day period. This can be as little as 21 days, just a little bit more compacted here, or it can be as long as 60 to 90 days. Mostly it's 30 to 45 day closings these days. When you start out with your transaction, you will have been pre-approved already. So you're over here on this timeline. If you can see my cursor around the 21st, 22nd of the month of January, you've been pre-approved and you're out, you're ready to go shopping. When you find a house, you're going to make an offer on that home and you'll make a deposit with the seller called an earnest money deposit. This is generally about $1,000 these days, and that'll be held in escrow for you on your behalf until you get to closing, in which case it will count towards the money you would need to bring to closing. So it's just, think of it as sitting there waiting for you at the closing table. On the other hand, there will be a bigger deposit required down the road. We'll talk about that. And when you make your offer, you're going to lay out how much deposit money you will be giving the seller up front. So keep in mind, you will need some money early in your transaction. It's called earnest money. Right after your offer is accepted, you'll probably schedule a home inspection if you're going to do one, and you might get a home insurance quote from your home insurance agent. Once those are done, if you don't do a home inspection, or once the home inspection is complete to your satisfaction, then you'll usually want to call us and we'll get your rate locked at that time. We'll send you loan disclosures. We'll order the appraisal. We'll order the title work. You want those done as quickly as possible and as early as possible in your transaction. The rate lock will cover the interest rate protection all the way through and past your closing date. And your loan will get put into processing at that time. So you get loan disclosures to review and e-sign. There's probably 45 pages of stuff there. And you start working with the settlement agent, the closing attorney, and your real estate agent on the purchase and sales document. This is the contract in which you'll sign between you and the seller that further outlines the steps between then and closing, the numbers of your transaction, if you renegotiated the numbers a little bit as a result of the inspection. All of that will get worked out on your purchase and sales step. Remember, you're going to be giving that seller a bigger pile of money at that time, more earnest money. And it's usually a bigger chunk of money. I'll put $10,000 here. Could be something like that. Could be $50,000. Could be 5% of the house price. Those are common things I see. Could be $2,000. It's really up to you and your real estate agent to negotiate that ahead of time when you're making the offer. Your loan is in processing at that time. That's where our team here in Westford is going to be going through your file, making sure it's all set for underwriting. We might ask you for a few more documents like pay stub, refresh, or a bank statement. We're going to verify this $1,000 and this $10,000 earnest money deposit to make sure it came out of your bank account. So keep a copy of the check or get a copy of the check from your bank statement once it clears the bank. Once your file is all complete, it's going to go to underwriting. It'll get approved ahead of time, irrespective of if the appraisal is back, and we'll get the loan approval and we'll tell you about that. But the appraiser is going to finish the appraisal job and send us a copy of the appraisal. You'll get a copy as well at the same time in PDF format. That appraisal will be sent to underwriting for approval. Title work will be completed on the property by the closing attorney. We'll get a copy of that as well, making sure that when you buy the home, as best we can tell from the attorney, that the title is going to be clear. Underwriting will review everything in your file and approve your mortgage. They'll send the branch processing team a loan approval, and our processing team will go through that approval, making sure there's no material conditions in there that we missed or that you have to provide. And we want to clear those up immediately if we do. So those are material conditions that you would not want to show on this commitment letter. The commitment letter is the bank's promise to close on your transaction and fund your loan. And if there's any conditions in that commitment letter that are material in nature, like a pay stub that we still need, like we're missing a W-2 from employment, or you just changed jobs and the contingencies haven't been cleared off your job offer, we're going to want to clear those up and ask for an extension of the commitment before that commitment is delivered or that date passes. You don't want to pass this date without providing evidence to the seller that you've got a commitment or that you cannot get a mortgage and you need your $10,000 and your $1,000 back. You need to escape the transaction. So the commitment date comes and goes. You've provided commitment to the seller, showing them that your financing is all set up and lined up for closing. That's when you're going to finalize your moving plans and home insurance. Then you'll get a preliminary closing disclosure a couple of days before closing, usually 3 or more. We've delivered them as early as 15 days before closing. This is just an early look at what your closing is going to look like on the day of closing from a numbers perspective. It's about 3 pages long. The bottom of the 3rd page has your number, like how much cash you need to bring to close, but it is not your final number, because between then and closing, the closing attorney, the closing department, the town tax authority, they're all going to be talking and settling up numbers and per diem, setting up a per diem for how much taxes you owe. Maybe you owe some money to the seller for that. Maybe there's some oil in the oil tank and we're getting a final oil reading through the real estate agents and the seller's agent. And we're going to be charging you on the closing statement for the oil that's left in the oil tank for that house that you're buying. So those are the kind of little adjustments that'll happen before closing, and that often can happen up to the day before closing. What you need to know now is that you may not get your final number, the amount of check you would need to bring to closing. It's going to be a certified check. And so talk to your bank early on, find out how much the bank where the money is for closing, find out how much how much time you need to get a certified bank check for your closing day. That check you bring to closing that day to settle out your purchase transaction needs to be a certified bank check. Unless, of course, you're selling a house on the same day, in which case the attorney can just wire money to this new transaction settlement agent so that you can use those funds right away. So it's very common to close same day, but if you're not doing that and you're getting the money out of your bank, make sure you can get it quickly. It takes 10 minutes to get a certified bank check usually, but you want to know ahead of time. So if you need a number maybe 5 days before closing because your bank is in another state and it's going to take some time, or maybe the wire would take time, we can give you a high number. So we can tell you a little bit high number, more than we expect you to need at that closing day. That'll be between us and the closing attorney to work that out. And then you can get that check or wire that money directly to the settlement agent. And then the attorney will give you a refund at closing for what the overpayment was. You can't undershoot the number, but you can overshoot the number. So remember that if you're going to have trouble getting those funds ready for the day of closing, maybe the day before closing, make sure that you prearrange to have that money sent early, and you can talk with us on how much you'd need. The day before closing, you'll do your final walkthrough with the real estate agent to make sure the seller didn't bust up the property before they moved out, and that it's in broom clean condition like your contract would likely say. And then you're going to get your final number that day, maybe the day before, showing you exactly how much cash is going to be due at closing. And it may have changed a little bit from this preliminary closing disclosure that's required to be sent to you by law 3 days outside closing. So the final number can be slightly different as a result of those property-related adjustments. You'll go get the check. You can even get the check same day. I've done that before when I've closed on a home, run to the bank, grab a check, go to the closing. Closings today, they're mostly hybrid, and that means you are e-signing most of your closing documents the day of closing. You'll get to review them the day before closing, but you're going to be e-signing them, clicking and e-signing a whole bunch of documents the day of closing. You'll also visit with the attorney typically in what's called a hybrid closing, where you'll sit with the attorney for a few minutes and sign a few legal documents like the mortgage and the deed, things that might be recorded at the registry of deeds, the note, those things that you might ink sign when it's not a full remote electronic closing. So we can do electronic closings today in Massachusetts and New Hampshire on certain transactions. It does cost an extra fee of like $125 or $130 because there's a notary that's going to be doing a Zoom meeting with you. So you need to be in front of a laptop and with a camera on showing them your driver's license and certifying your identity to this notary. And then you can e-sign all of your documents that day. Okay, so that's possible if you're relocating from another part of the country and you can't show up the day of closing. If you have any further questions about this whole transaction and the process, give me a call anytime. I can walk you through it again. I will have a copy of this spreadsheet available for you if you'd like to download it as well. It's really cool to play with it. You can change the dates in yellow, and the whole spreadsheet will move around and change just in case you do want an actual timeline for your transaction. I hope this helped. Have a great time shopping and call if you need us.